Je pense qu'on va commencer. Bonjour et bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je me présente, mon nom est Mark Koury, je suis le président par intérim du Parti Avenir canadien. Alors, le Parti Avenir canadien, c'est quoi? C'est un nouveau parti, nous sommes jeunes de 4 mois. Nous avons eu notre congrès fondateur en novembre passé. Et à ce congrès, nous avons choisi, entre autres, notre chef, Dominic Cardy, que je vais présenter dans quelques instants. Hi everyone, my name is Mark Koury. I am the president of the Canadian Future Party. The Canadian Future Party is a new party. We had our founding convention in November of last year, and at that convention, amongst other things, we selected our leader. Our leader is Dominic Cardy, who I will be presenting in a few moments. Dominic is a former leader of the New Brunswick NDP, as well as the former Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development in the New Brunswick government. He also has, prior to that, a long career in years of overseas democracy development. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dominic and let him take it from there.
We're going to get out of the way.
Hey, thank you everyone for being here today for the official launch of the Canadian Future Party's first ever national election campaign. Couldn't ask for it to be in stranger times, but also times that are so important for the future of our country. That we've seen, I think, in the last few days, the need for a new party to address Canada's 21st century challenges. We've seen the need for a party that rejects extremism on the right and rejects ties to foreign and hostile states on the left. We've seen the need for boldness as we face a threat from a country that we once considered to be the closest of friends, and that in a world where democracy is very much on the back foot. The world that most of us over the age of 20 grew up with is done and dead and over. It's a new and difficult world that Canada is now facing, and we have to decide how we're going to confront it together. And we believe in the Canadian Future Party that if one thing is clear, it is that old ideas of the left and the right no longer make any sense. C'est clair, en 2025, de dire que le gouvernement va gérer tous, c'est fou. L'idée que le gouvernement va diriger rien, également fou. Qu'est-ce qui se marche? Les programmes sociaux dirigés par un gouvernement, dans le contexte d'un marché aussi libre que possible, pour assurer qu'on a les investissements à diriger pour le bien-être des Canadiens et Canadiennes. Ça, c'est notre tâche comme un pays. Ça, c'est notre tâche comme cette partie. Mais regarde, un pays, ça ne gère pas. Il se gouverne. Il se gouverne en fonction de mandats démocratiques octroyés par ses citoyens. Les électeurs n'élisent pas un conseil d'administration, mais un gouvernement. On a besoin de faire les changements nécessaires afin que les citoyens de notre pays sentent mieux représentés. Et pour cela, qu'on va adopter un système de représentation proportionnelle mixte, ainsi que des changements dans la manière que les caucus dans la Chambre des communes sont dirigés par les chefs de parti. On a besoin d'augmenter le pouvoir des citoyens de choisir la représentative, et on a besoin aussi d'augmenter le pouvoir des membres de la Chambre des communes. Ils ne sont pas là pour être les machines de vote 4-5 ans. Ils sont là pour prendre les décisions, d'écouter aux citoyens et citoyennes et prendre les messages, et oui, des fois les messages difficiles à leur chef. Je pense que peut-être M. Trudeau aurait eu une fin à son temps en politique active plus positive s'il avait eu accès à un caucus qui était prêt à dire à lui la vérité, même quand c'était difficile. And that's why we're going to need a politics of boldness, a politics of ambition, and most importantly, a politics based on a return to an idea that sounds old-fashioned now, but is needed more than ever, a return to honesty in politics. And that used to be said by all politicians in all occasions. Of course, who wants a dishonest politics? But let's look at two recent examples. Mr. Cardy, who I want to start by giving full credit for having started off on the right foot in taking a strong stand against the American administration and making it clear that Canada will not be pushed around. And I hope that message continues today with whatever bizarre announcement comes from the White House, adding on to the mountain of other bizarre announcements that sadly now wash over our politics. But we've seen that in contrast to that strength when it comes to the United States, a weakness when it comes to dealing with the single most dangerous government this world has ever seen, the Chinese Communist Party and its regime in Beijing. It has murdered more people, oppressed more people, disrupted international trade and security more than any other country since the Second World War. Why does our governing party continue to accept its ties with a government that shares none of our values of freedom, democracy, individual rights, and tolerance? So, Mr. Carney, my plea to you, stand up to Beijing the way you stand up to the Americans. Monsieur Poilievre, 3 candidates down yesterday. Soon he'll have to fire more candidates than we're going to be able to run in this election. If you don't have values at the heart of your vetting process for your candidates, you're not offering Canadians a valid alternative in government. When you say as a leader that no matter what happens, you will never impose restrictions in the face of a pandemic or public health outbreak, what you're doing is saying, not that you're serious about appealing to folks who crowded around Parliament Hill 3 years ago in the convoy. What you're doing is saying you're not serious. Because an H1N1 pandemic is spreading across the farms of the world right now, and 1 or 2 genetic changes and it reaches humans, and when that disease reaches humans, the fatality rate is 50%. Mr. Poilievre, are you seriously telling me you're going to let 50% of Canadians die as some sort of commitment to appealing to a chunk of your base that has more in common with the Americans destroying that great democracy than anything to do with Canadian values, history, or tradition? So, Mr. Poilievre, clean up your house. Expel those candidates who have spoken against science, against reason, against inclusive approach to politics that defends people regardless of who they are, who they love, and where they come from. C'est clair que notre parti est fondé sur les principes qui sont un peu différents que les attitudes radicales héritées de la société américaine. Définitivement centriste, le PAC s'appuie sur notre vision de l'évolution de la société canadienne. La raison qui nous commande de s'appuyer sur les faits, l'état des connaissances actuelles ainsi que la recherche scientifique pour appuyer ses propositions et ses prises de décision. So when we talk about our independence, which has become a subject that I don't think many of us imagined would ever be up for debate, we have to talk about how we got into the position that we're in. We have allowed, over recent decades, our politics to become divorced from values and divorced from honesty. A pursuit of free trade with dictatorships has led to a vast sucking away of our intellectual property, the erosion of our rights here at home, the absolute horror of the Chinese Communist Party operating police stations on our soil in the 21st century. This is unacceptable, and it must end with a clear statement that yes, we believe in free trade, because free trade between democracies has given the world more wealth, more opportunity, and more equality than we have ever seen before. It's given us the technology that's around us today we're all using as part of this press conference. It's given us the freedoms to be able to talk and share about ideas that 100, 150 years ago would have us locked up. It's built an open society for us. So democracy and free trade go together. And we can never again make the mistake of allowing the benefits of free trade to be shared with those countries that do not share our values. So my party is going to talk about values all the time. I've put this into practice in my career. I kicked the Chinese Confucius Institutes out of New Brunswick's public schools. And showing how these are connected, the Chinese immediately turned up in my office, totally outside the bounds of international norms in terms of how diplomats are supposed to behave, and threatened me in my province and said that, gosh, you know, if people back home in China found out what you were saying about the Confucius Institutes and about our country, they might not want to buy your lobster anymore. And amazingly, the consul had access to the exact figures about how many dollars would be lost. But you know what happened? We stood firm, we kicked them out, and the Chinese are still buying our lobster. Democracies beat dictatorships every time, but only if we start up by standing proud and firm for our values and for democracy. That is going to become that much harder in the face of the threats to our independence. And you'll see behind me our slogan for this election campaign, building a northern democratic superpower. So I want to ask everyone listening a question. Can our country remain independent if we do not have the ability to defend ourselves? To me, the answer is obviously no. Our allies are far away, preoccupied by war in Europe, the threat of war in East Asia, the chaos of the Trump administration, and a collapse inside democracies that is touching every country, including Canada. If our country is going to maintain its independence, we must embrace an ambitious project for the 21st century of making Canada the northern democratic superpower, a country with an armed forces large enough to pretend our vast borders is a country with an armed force capable of protecting and expanding democracy around the world. Because make no mistake, my party believes that democracy is the only valid form of government, and we will do our best to support democrats everywhere and to undermine autocrats and dictators, no matter where we find them. Mais ça commence ici à la maison. Lorsque les trois grandes puissances mondiales sont les États-Unis, la Russie et la Chine, longe l'Arctique canadien avec envie, le Canada doit s'affirmer ou sinon d'accepter de devenir un champ de bataille entre ces grandes puissances. Nous avons un choix historique à faire aujourd'hui. En 2006, le Canada s'était engagé à augmenter les défenses militaires à 2% du produit intérieur brut. Le Canada est devenu un premier de classe pour les belles paroles et un dernier de classe lorsqu'il s'agit de respecter ses engagements. Grand parleur, petit faiseur, comme il dit en Québec. On respecte nos engagements ou on ne les prend pas. And that's why the Canadian Future Party will propose to move our defense spending not to the 2% that the Liberals and Conservatives say is acceptable by 2030, 15 years after we made the promise to move to 2%, but to 2.25% this year, and then as high as is needed to meet our NATO commitments, but most importantly, to make sure that our country is protected. That means changes. It means saying no more purchasing from countries that don't share our values, and that includes the United States at this difficult moment. It means redirecting our trade and military alliances to democracies that are reliable partners for our country. So today, when it comes to our military, we need to buy fast, and then we need to start building Canadian. We can do this. German factories have popped up in Ukraine over the last 2 years, building and repairing the tanks they need to fight the Russian fascist threat. We can do the same here. Canada can be the arsenal for democracy in the 21st century, as the United States was in the 20th, a position it sadly abandoned. But nature abhors a vacuum. Let's have Canada fill that vacuum. Let's build a bigger country. Monsieur Poilievre talks, good point, we need to train 30,000 new tradespeople. But guess what, Monsieur Poilievre? I know you don't want to talk about immigration, but we don't have those people in Canada to do that training. When I was Minister of Education in New Brunswick, we had years-long waiting lists hiring tradespeople because there was no one to do the work. We're going to need to create a special class for tradespeople to come into this country. Let's offer those visas to our American friends who want to live in a stable and properly democratic country. Similarly, let's invite Americans who've got medical, defense, and other expertise to come to Canada, just as in the 1930s. Einstein and other great scientists fled fascism. Canada can be a home for Democrats who want to change the world. Briefly on Mr. Trump. First, we need to stop talking about Mr. Trump quite as much and start responding exactly to what he does. And today we know is, in his twisted view of the world, Liberation Day, the destruction of the free trade regime that made America great. Now, as his foreign policy appears to be more oriented towards the Kremlin than Main Street, Canada faces a choice. This is the Canadian Future Party's choice. If given any influence in the Canadian government, the following to be imposed. First, the expulsion of a diplomat from the United States Embassy and consulates every single time a U.S. administration official refers to our country, Canada, as a state, disparages our Prime Minister, or otherwise threatens our independence. I've mentioned already the need to diversify away from countries that are unstable or non-democratic for our defense and other trade deals. We also need to look at repeating the actions that have been taken by our government so far of imposing consequential tariffs in response to every move made by the US. At home, we have to prepare for this. Ending interprovincial trade barriers. Mr. Carney has promised that will happen by July 1st. If he is elected, hold him to it. If Mr. Poilievre is elected, ask him his plan. We have to take advantage of the 2% of GDP that we're leaving lying on the table because our provinces and the federal government have not had the leadership to be able to fix this issue. It's a federal government's job to tell the provinces this must stop. Part of that means the federal government needs to respect its responsibilities. No more federal programs that overlap provincial responsibilities. No more as well, in the face of this global crisis, hamstringing and handcuffing our energy resources when our European and other democratic allies need them. We are a party that believes in climate change, believes in its danger to the human race, but knows as well that only democracies will fight climate change. And that the steps that we take today to defend democracy will decide whether we can confront climate change in the future. So we need to return to a normal politics. A politics decided by governments sending boring letters to each other, not billionaires barking at each other on Twitter. A politics where we have agreements and disagreements and we share those points of view civilly in our House of Commons, understanding that we share a common set of values. Et c'est pour ça que mon parti est un parti qui est au cœur du projet occidental, de l'épanouissement des libertés personnelles, de responsabilité collective, des droits individuels, tous les acquis qui ont changé le monde dans la dernière centaine des années ou petit peu plus, pour donner à nous, les gens normaux, d'un pouvoir incroyable en comparaison avec le reste des pays dans le monde aujourd'hui et même dans notre pays dans l'histoire. This is a moment of incredible change and challenge for the world. My party's a little startup party. We started 100 or so days ago. I'm so thrilled to have some of the folks who are going to be standing in our first election, working to build our constituency associations across the country, here with me today in Ottawa. Part of my commitment to honesty is being honest. We're not here saying we're going to win this next election. You know what we're here to do? We're here to try and change the debate. About 15 of our ideas have been picked up by other parties so far, and we're going to keep on pushing those out there. And I keep on saying that, you know what we should call our platform? Just be steal our platform, please. Because one of the problems that we're having right now is that tied-innedness to old school politics where no one's brave, no one's honest, and no one talks about what needs to be done. And my party's filled with military officers, former intelligence officials, business people, health executives, doctors, people from across the professional world who just look at the way that our big parties are behaving and saying, these guys are not up to the task. So stay tuned. Tu vas entendre beaucoup plus du Parti Avenir canadien parce que le Canada est un pays qui est devenu riche, basé sur l'évidence, basé sur le travail fort et basé sur l'honnêteté et notre habilité de travailler ensemble. On va continuer de travailler ensemble. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep building. Thank you so much for being here for our launch today. We're going to get out and pound the pavements for as many of our candidates as we can across the country, and we're going to be here for the long term. Let's change Canada. Merci beaucoup. God bless our country. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get out of the way so we can see the, and then we'll get out of here.
Let me know if you guys have any questions. Happy to answer. Otherwise, I will have the dinner. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.